Welcome to the Spirit of a Badass, where we celebrate stories of courage, hope, and resiliency. I'm your host, Alecia Jacobson.
Hello, badasses. Today's episode is all about boundaries and saying no, which that might give you heart palpitations just thinking about saying no to someone, because there are so many of you that I either work with or just in conversation. The look on people's faces when I suggest that let's practice some boundaries here and let's practice leaning into this word no. It is a tricky one, and that is what we are talking today. And I'm really excited. My guest today has taken people pleasing to Olympic levels. For decades, she put everyone else's needs above her own until she hit a metaphorical brick wall. After committing to one too many responsibilities, Sheryl Green discovered the importance of boundaries. Okay, she actually discovered that boundaries were even a thing. Now she is the how to say no expert, working with individuals and organizations to establish healthy boundaries to improve relationships, communication, and well-being. Sheryl has a master's degree in forensic psychology. She is the author of 7 books and 1 coloring book, including You Had Me at No, How Setting Healthy Boundaries Helps You Banish Burnout, Repair Relationships, and Save Your Sanity. She and her husband, Tom, live in Las Vegas with their 2 rescue dogs and 150 houseplants. I've already admired her houseplants. Welcome, Sheryl.
Thank you so much. The houseplant number has gone up. We're somewhere around the 180. I cannot say no to plants.
I had plants when I first kind of stepped into adulthood, like in my first marriage, and I had them. And now that I have plants again, I've wondered, I don't know what I did with my plants. I think I might have given them to my grandma, but now I really wish I would have kept them. But I'm also slightly obsessed with them. On TikTok, I have like plant feeds and I want more, but I struggle. We kind of already had a conversation. Like I have things that I haven't quite overcome yet to get more plants, but I definitely want more plants.
I support
There's
that.
such joy.
Say yes to plants.
Yes. Yeah. There's just so much joy in them. I think, there's some that I keep next to my bed. Something on TikTok said this is the kind to keep in your bedroom. So they are there.
Yep. And they're protecting you and making the air more breathable. And yeah, they're good friends.
Yes. So I love that about you. All right. So we're just I feel like there's a lot to cover here today. And I want to jump into your story right away and the things that you experienced and how you arrived at the no expert.
Yeah. So boy, how did I get here? 40 plus years of always saying yes. It actually kind of starts in childhood, but when COVID happened, I had been running my own content writing business. And of course, overnight, all of my clients disappeared, as many people's did. And I was working part-time at the time for an animal rescue that I had volunteered with for years, served on the board, all the things. So I just went full-time. Which if you've ever worked in the nonprofit world, you know, full-time is not 8 hours. Full-time is 12, 14, 7 days a week. Then my clients started coming back. And I had to take them because nonprofit also doesn't pay very well. So I'm trying to keep this roof over my head. I'm working for the rescue. I'm running my own business. My parents are getting older and needing more of my time. I've got 1 dog at the time, and I'm still volunteering for everything. You need help, I'm there. Whether it's an organization or a friend or whatever it is, I'm omnipresent at this point. And I broke. I started crying more. And I have to clarify that for people that know me because I already cry a lot. But this was just beyond. I mean, I couldn't get a sentence out without tears flowing. And I was short with people. I was starting to feel resentful of the people and to some degree, even the animals that I loved. Everything just seemed like a demand on my time, a demand on my energy. And one day I was driving down the road and I saw the oncoming headlights. And I was like, if I just kind of cross over this median, this could all be over in a split second. And it scared the crap out of me. Thankfully, I pulled off the road. I calmed myself down to some degree. I never, ever want to hurt someone else. And I wouldn't want to have left my parents or my dog without me. So calmed myself down, cleared off my plate of all non-essential things. I took a month off from the rescue for my mental health. And truthfully, I worked on a couple of client things during that time, but mostly I worked on jigsaw puzzles. It was like the one way for me to just stay calm and be able to kind of look inward and see what I really wanted. Ended up no longer working for the rescue. And a couple months later, my plate started filling up again. I'm volunteering again, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and I'm there for everyone. And it really hit one day. My friend, my good friend, she's my big sister, she asked me to be the incoming president for our local speakers association. And I knew the answer was no. I knew it was a terrible plan. I mean, at this point, parents are even older. I had met my husband during this time and we got engaged. Now I'm planning a wedding and moving and all of that. And I knew the answer was no, but I also didn't want to let her down. And it took 3 weeks of her like prodding me like, okay, are you going to do it? Are you going to do it? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I should. And finally she was like, I need an answer or I have to find somebody else. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And the second I said it, just every cell in my body was like, bad move. That was a bad move. And, she had said that there was only a certain number of hours per week and like, oh, it's only going to take you like an hour or two to do the work. Great. I can handle that. And then the meeting invites started coming. And I'm like, it might only take me an hour to do the work, but there's 3 to 4 hours of meetings each week. And I consulted with a mentor and he said, look, it's bad if you wait until you've gone through all the training and the year's up and it's your time to step in and you say no at that point. He goes, it's not bad if you tell her no now and she can find someone else. So I was sitting on a plane and I made the decision, realized that my problem all along had been a lack of boundaries. And I not only needed to learn them, but I needed to teach them and bring other people along on this journey. And I outlined my book on the plane. And then I got home and started researching and speaking to therapists and things like that. So it was a rough time, but so grateful for everything that came out of it.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of places I want to highlight in your story. One, you had already kind of cleared your plate. You had the sort of your breaking moment of, I cannot do this. You clear your plate. And then slowly shit starts adding up again. And this happens, I mean, with so many different areas in life. This isn't even boundaries where it's like, okay, I have to do this. And then slowly you don't even realize things are starting to erode again. And you're starting to go back to what feels most comfortable.
Yep.
And that is, and to know, okay, how did I get here again? And not take that as, generally I hear like, I have failed, I can't do it. This is, they kind of innately attribute it to something like a character flaw versus, okay, let me just course correct here once again. And then you said yes. And then you said every cell in my body. Like first you knew you shouldn't be saying yes. And then every cell in your body afterwards, like cringed inward of like, well, shit, now what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And that, I mean, I talk about this inner knowing all the time. You 100% knew this is a no. It wasn't a, oh, I don't know yet for the 3 weeks. Like you knew the words coming out of your mouth were, I don't know, but you knew. It was just like figuring out, okay, how do I actually get comfortable letting, with the perceived letting someone down and then going through with that. But hell yeah, to making the decision. And that's something that I think is really brave. And I hope other people take that from this, because even though you said yes, you knew it was a no, and then you went back and retracted that yes. And I think that is even bigger than learning how to say the no, is such a huge highlight of your story, because most people wouldn't do that. They would follow through. I made the commitment. I have to follow through on it, which yes, I think that's a great attribute. And if you're doing it to your own detriment, you're not going to be showing up good for anyone.
Well, and that's it. It's not just my own detriment. Like I could not have served that chapter. This same year, of course, I didn't know that this was going to happen, but I lost my stepmom and my dad went into memory care. I could not possibly have served that chapter in the way it needed. So it wouldn't be just letting me down. It would have been letting down a whole big group of people.
Good for you for doing that. Okay, so you've had this sort of epiphany and now you're like, okay, I'm writing a book. That's fucking amazing. That you just like, I'm writing it on the plane. I just wrote the outline and then you just did it. So tell about that process a little bit, going from, I'm practicing saying no to, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm not only going to continue probably practicing it yourself because it was new and fresh then, and then sharing it with other people.
Yeah, so I learn by writing. It's kind of how I process things. And I moved out to Vegas in 2008 and I took a writing class while I was going through my divorce and realized like, I'm actually pretty good at this. Like I have this talent, many other talents I do not have, but I have this talent. And it's kind of been how I relate to the world and how I understand things that I'm learning. So yeah, it was a no-brainer for me. As soon as I realized like I have this problem and I'm like, well, I am not the only one. I cannot possibly be the only person out there that has trouble saying no, that has spent their entire lives trying to please everyone around them at the detriment to themselves. And I was already kind of in the speaking world and I was like, well, this is the next topic. Like this is what I'm being led to do. I've written 9 books. 3 of them are fiction that I've never shown to the world. Like they're not going to see the light of day. But writing a book is just this like really enjoyable process for me, and for many people. But it was kind of like just on that airplane, it was, okay, what are the problems that I've had? What are the situations that have come up that I can now look back on and go, ooh, that was a boundary and that was crossed because I never put it out there. I never communicated the fact that this is how I expect to be treated. It was really a very amazing process. And I knew that I didn't know everything. I knew that, going into it, I was like, okay, I'm learning as I'm going. So I looked to the strong, powerful, intelligent women in my life that I saw had healthy boundaries and I knew they weren't born with them. And I reached out and I was like, hey, can I just interview you? Can you just share what your journey's been like, how you learned to do this and how other people can as well? Just amazing women. That really confirmed everything I was reading. I'm doing all this research at that point. And then I reached out to a therapist because while I have a master's in psychology, it is not clinical. And I don't ever want to lead anyone down the wrong path. And I don't ever want to give anybody advice that, that hurts them. So I gave it to 2 therapists and I was like, am I going to break anyone? And they both read the book and they're like, no, this is amazing. And this is going to be required reading for my clients. Because, so often you hear therapists and even coaches say like, you have to have healthy boundaries. You're like, great. What does that mean? It's like being told like, you have to eat healthy. Okay.
Do I take the 30 Instagram people and just eat like them?
Exactly.
I mean, right there. Yes.
Exactly. And that guy that's like, you can eat pizza all day long. And he's like jacked. Yeah. Don't listen. I mean,
just take this pill first.
Seriously. Yeah. So it just, I wanted it to be this deep dive for people that have maybe been given that advice, like get some boundaries. And we're like, I don't know what to do now. So
yeah. That's really cool. So I want to say, so writing a book has been something that has sort of been on my back burner list forever. I think I have too many children that right now take up my brain space. So someday, but I'm really thankful that you shared the bit about giving it to therapists to read. Will I break anyone? Because that is actually something where I struggle with that piece of, I want to make sure that I'm giving, because that's why I tell people, like, don't just believe everything you hear from people, because it doesn't mean it's right for you, but I worry about sometimes my words. Are they going to land? And I don't want to break anyone.
Right.
Like I say that laughingly. It's not funny, but I don't want to break anyone. But I really like that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Will you give a story from your book on how someone did this, or maybe even another story from your life? Because I think the more people can see themselves in the stories, the more they're like, oh, okay, if this person can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. So I don't actually remember if this is in my book, but as I mentioned, my parents were getting older. They needed more of me, and they were 7 minutes from my house. We lived literally 7 minutes away. So I always said to my dad, like, if you ever need anything, like, I'd rather you call me to get something out of the attic space than go up on a ladder, fall, and now I have to go take care of you for the next 9 months. So normally when they called, like, I dropped everything. And they called me one day. He's like, Sheryl, we just sat down at lunch and the house alarm went off. You have to go over and make sure everything's okay. And again, I'm in my people pleasing phase. I'm like, okay, I drop my work. I'm literally like working and ready to get on a meeting. And I just drop everything and I go flying out the door. And I get there. It's fine. There's nothing. The alarm just went off. And the next time he called me, I was already like somewhat into this journey. And again, like, Sheryl, like, you have to go over. The alarm just went off. And I was like, okay, no, wait a second. I'm like, okay, hold on. Let's think about this. One, their cat hides no matter who comes into the house. He's up under the bed. You're not finding the cat. He is not in danger. Two, they had a gun. It was in a safe. So don't have to worry about that getting out into the world. And three, like, I don't know if you can really like see me, but I'm not like Wonder Woman over here. What the hell am I going to do if there's actually a criminal in the house? Like, what am I going to do? Tell him a story? So I thought about it. Like, I resisted that urge to spit out my yes. I resisted that urge and I actually thought about it and I ran those things by my dad. Great sense of humor. And he goes, yeah, you're right. I'm sure it's fine. And it was just like, did I lose a relationship? No. Did I endanger anyone? No. Did I actually put my needs first for maybe the first time ever? Oh, yeah. And I just went back to work. And you know what? Everything was fine. Nobody was pillaging the house. So resist that urge to say yes. I call that the yes vomit. And I know it's gross, but it's that moment that someone asks you a question and maybe they haven't even finished. Maybe they have not even, like, they're not done speaking. And you're like, yes, I got you. Yep, I can do that for sure. Everything you need. Absolutely. And our brains don't get involved. Like, our heart doesn't get involved. We don't have that moment to check in with ourselves. So pause. Give yourself that minute. If you have to clamp a hand over your mouth, like, go for it. Like, nothing wrong with a little drama, but buy yourself some time and breathe and either think in the moment or let them know, you know what, I have to check my calendar. I have to think about it. I have to see if I'm available, blah, 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 whatever it is. I'll let you know and then give them a date.
Yeah, perfect. What do you have for either advice or stories around this sort of catastrophizing of I'm going to lose this friendship or I'm going to let them down? That's a very real and very extreme, big emotion feeling that people pleasers have, is that this is going to be a huge, huge, when actually it's really not. I mean, we know that now, but in the moment, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah. So, okay, two things. One, I want to kind of break down where that fear comes from because it's subconscious. We're still working off that lizard brain, that like caveman, must stay safe brain. And when we are afraid that we're going to say no and the world's going to end, it's because we're actually afraid of being eaten. And sometimes when you say that to yourself, like, it's actually like oh, wait a second. Okay, this is ridiculous. Huh. And you can like laugh yourself out of it. But if you like back in caveman days, if you were not liked, if you didn't do what other people needed, then you were cast out of the tribe. If you were cast out of the tribe, there was nobody watching your back. You take turns sleeping because somebody's got to keep an eye out for the wildebeests or the saber-toothed tigers or whatever happens to be, coming and picking people off. And if you're not part of that tribe, if nobody's got your back, then literally you're afraid to be eaten. So I've done it to myself multiple times where like I'll run through, and I call it disaster piece theater, where you run through the absolute worst case scenario. And I follow it all the way down, and I'm like, and then I will be eaten. And like, once that clicks, I'm like, okay, wait a second. This is the lizard brain talking, and I don't need to be in this state for something as simple as, hey, do you want to go out to dinner on Sunday? So I'll say that, like, understanding that kind of allows us to take a step back and look at it for what it really is. The other thing that I'll say about it is if you say no to doing something and your friend, and I'm going to put that in quotation marks, and your friend like completely abandons you and doesn't want anything to do with you anymore, I would really like look at that friendship, because it's not one. There's different responses to you got boundaries. And one of them is the pat on the head, like, I've been waiting for this to happen. I'm so proud of you. Those are like your awesome people in your life. And then you're going to have the next level that it's going to take them a little bit. They've been depending on you. They've been expecting things of you for how long? And now they have to experience change. They have to face change. And it may take them a little bit, and they may push back a little bit, but you've always done this. And you're like, no, I'm standing my ground. And eventually they'll come around and they're good too. And then you have the people that they refuse to accept it. They refuse to bend. If you are not what they want you to be, then they can't accept that, and they don't belong in your life. So part of boundaries is having that internal strength to say, you don't get me anymore.
Yeah. And it's hard to see in the beginning, but that is a gift to yourself, because likely you've already known that. There's probably deep inside you this like, oh, this doesn't feel good. When you leave, a conversation or a party with them, it's like, oh, that didn't feel good, but maybe you can't quite figure out why. And it's those, they don't really respect you most likely, or take advantage. Like if you're a yes person, it's like, oh, we know who we're going to go to because this is the person that will say yes. I love the part about one, just the science of it, because that's something where people can think when they're having this fear, they can actually think about, okay, this served, this was a survival tool. However, I don't need somebody standing guard at my bedroom door at night. I don't need this anymore. So that's a really neat kind of reflection when they're doing the pause to think of what's actually going on inside my brain right now. And that's then signaling your body. And how can you use that sort of logic to pull you out of the disaster piece theater? You really like that. So that, I think with friendships and things like that, what do you say to the people who this might be a work relationship? Because those are a little bit more tricky. How do you suggest navigating something like that?
Yeah. So when it comes to work, there are going to be certain situations where you don't have a lot of say. You can communicate, you can set your boundaries, you can set your expectations. And when it comes to a boss or a manager, they may have other thoughts, and it might not matter to them what you want. To that, I would say you always have the opportunity to walk away. Not immediately. I am not suggesting anyone quits their jobs today, but you always have the right to look at your circumstances and go, this doesn't work for me. What else can I do? And I think many of us have left jobs over boundary issues, whether or not we realize them. We might not have been able to put a label on it, but ultimately, when you don't like how you're being treated and you've tried everything in that moment, and look, communication goes a long way. It really does. This was, probably 20 something years ago. I worked for a call center for a mortgage product. Fun, let me tell you. And they brought in, I was the highest call taker every single month, like most calls, like best reviews, everything. And they brought in like middle management that was between me and my supervisor. And this is, again, before I even have like the strength to stand up to someone. But she was like hovering constantly. And, oh, well, what if you do this? What if you do this? You should do this, blah, 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 blah. And she's like listening to my calls. And I finally like worked up the nerve and I was like, look, I understand this is how you manage, but I can't work this way. Give me 1 week. Just leave me alone for 1 week. If you don't like what I'm doing, then by all means, come on in and hover. But if I am, please leave me alone. And I said it respectfully, and she did. And after the week was over, she just walked by my cubicle and she was like, you're good. And we had a great relationship moving forward. So, you can have those conversations. Some of the time they'll be met well. Some of the times they won't. And that's when you start looking, and never leave until you have something else.
Yeah. I like that. Just, no, you don't have to stay anywhere. That is always an option. And I don't think a lot of people have that. It's like, okay, this is what I have. There's no options. They don't kind of think about the possibilities. So after the fact where, you have that conversation and it's met with not respecting this boundary, what then? Because what happens, I hear sometimes if people are practicing this, is that this is not going to work. They see it as the sort of internal fault. How do you keep that momentum going when you've been met with someone who's not going to kind of get on board with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. We can have a boundary slip up or a boundary failure, whatever you want to call it, and we can throw in the towel. Or you can say, okay, had a little slip up there that maybe didn't work out as planned, but I'm going to keep going. So I would say, 1, jump back on the boundary bandwagon. Okay. Use them elsewhere. Okay. Even going to the store and having, someone pack your groceries a way that is not the best, your eggs are on the bottom and they're going to be squished. Like, even just being able to say, hey, would you mind pulling those eggs out and putting them in a separate bag? You're still practicing. You're still building those muscles. And that's all boundaries are. It's just a different muscle that you have to build. So if it's not working in one place, okay, you can deal with that separately, but don't forget it everywhere else. So that's the first thing I would say. And the second one is that, look, while you're still in that job, while you're still dealing with those people, whoever they may be, adjust your expectations for your own sanity, not for anybody else, but just, don't wake up every morning and go, okay, this is going to be the day that they're going to listen to me and they're going to respect me. And then you're let down. I would say just kind of be like, okay, they're probably not going to treat me the way that I would like to be treated. And it's not okay, but it is. So I'm going to go to my happy place, or I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make it through. And then maybe I'm going to go sit in my car during lunch and look at the classifieds. Are they still called the classifieds? Am I aging myself right now? I don't know. Whatever. Indeed, whatever you look at. So really kind of adjust your expectations for you, not for anybody else.
Could you, a couple things come up here. One, I would like you to kind of define boundary, because I think that sometimes gets a little misconstrued also, which maybe we should have started with that, but whatever. But I wanted to say the idea with the grocery store, I'm going to give a little story, and I don't like to tell not my stories. It's my husband's story. I was going to say somebody I know. No, it's just my husband. Something that he has started doing because he doesn't want to sort of ruffle feathers or kind of things like, and restaurants where he'll get food. And if it's not, he'll just keep it. And something that he's been doing lately is saying, oh, this isn't right. And then asking, and it's been several months now. And the impact and the kind of joy that comes after him saying and then getting what he actually wanted. And that's such a simple, for me, I would think nothing, like I would just say it. But it was a very hard thing to begin to do. And it's such a simple thing. So those kind of places where you're not going to see the people ever again. And it's sort of a safe, easy first step to practice and flex this muscle. I also like how you connected it to kind of flexing it as a muscle. I think that's such a great way to look at that.
And I honestly, with your husband's story, it brings up a great point. And that's, you don't have to be nasty when you're setting a boundary. Like, it is not necessary. Like, your husband's just like, yep, this isn't right. Can you bring me what I'd like? You can be horrible to the wait staff. They're probably going to spit in your food. But, I always say, like, I'm super nice. I'm like, oh, actually, that's not what I ordered. Like, can I have it done this way? 95% of the time, people are like, oops, sorry, So it's okay to communicate in a kind manner in most situations.
Okay, now we're going to kind of rewind all the way back to the beginning of what is give us like the almost like anatomy of a boundary.
Yeah. So I like to describe a boundary as how you expect to be treated. And by extension, your stuff, your emotions, your mental state, your physical things, and your family. So it's really that line. And if you look at it as really a physical, something we can see, think about wherever you live. You're in a house, you're in an apartment, whatever. There's either walls or there's a fence or there's something that clearly delineates, this is where my property starts and your property ends. And when people step over that property, their dog's pooping on your lawn, they come into your house unannounced, any of those things, like, that's a very clear boundary violation. We can see that. We may not be able to do anything about it, but we can see it. But it's not as clear when it comes to ourselves, when it comes to our emotions, our stuff, our car, our clothing, whatever it may be, our money and our time. And that is such a huge one. I saw a meme once and it said, I didn't say no because I was busy. I said no because I didn't want to be.
Yes.
And I was like, I love it so much. But, we think that our time is just out there for the world to take. It is not. Yeah, when you're working, like you're responsible to someone else, fine. But when you are off the clock, like, that is your time to do as you wish. And if it's help people, fantastic. And if it's lay your ass on the couch and watch Netflix with your dog, awesome too. So what are the expectations around you, around your things, around your surroundings?
Yeah. The part about just because you have the time doesn't mean people don't get access to that. And I think that is such an important one because I know a lot of people have the mindset of, well, if I'm not doing anything, then I should say yes. I should, give my time or whatever to this. And no, you shouldn't. You can absolutely just say no for no reason. Like and that's another thing I want to highlight. That's another thing. You don't have to give a reason. You can just say no. You don't have to give an excuse or think you have to make up an excuse. You can just know that's not going to work. No, I'll take a rain check. Any variation of that, but you don't have to have a whole, like, sometimes, people will type up like the whole text message back. Yeah. Just erase it. Make it like three little words. Just delete.
Yeah. My attorney friend actually did that to me one day. I had sent her, I was having problems with a client And I wrote out this whole long email and I was like, I really need you to respect my boundaries and I won't be able to do this. And it was like 2 pages. And I sent it to her and she goes, this is really well written. I'm like, thank you. And she goes, delete it. I was like, excuse me? And she goes, type the following. And she goes, I will not be doing any more work until your payment is received. And I mean, I had the sweats.
I feel it for you.
Like, I was like, oh, it feels so dirty. But ultimately, that's what I needed to say. Because yeah, most people, you don't owe an explanation.
And if they're your people, 100% no. They really should have that kind of respect for you. Like I would not need a paragraph long explanation as to why one of my friends can't do something or why, anything like that. So they absolutely should. And I love I love attorneys and I love that they're just like, no, cut and dry. Like, I've worked with several attorneys over the years and now I have a friend who will send me her stuff and she will be like, can you fix this for me? And it's like, just delete, condense one sentence, done. Don't overspeak.
Yeah, exactly.
And the picture of, that might be a really nice thing for people when, you talked about like the dog pooping on your yard. That's a good visual for, I feel like you're kind of pooping. I feel like you're pooping on my yard right now. Like you're shitting in my lawn. Like this is not acceptable. So
I love this.
I need to come up with a boundary to keep you off my lawn here.
That is amazing. I am writing this down because that is absolutely amazing. I feel like you're pooping on my lawn.
Yes.
Yep. That is getting worked into things. I will give you credit.
Because, I mean, people can see if like, let's say that's happening. My neighbor's dog is coming out and they're, every morning there's a fresh pile on my lawn. I can see that and say, no, this isn't right. And no, we don't excuse that away. But then if people are breaking our boundaries and, for whatever reason, it's like we excuse it away or, well, I don't want to do that. And no, they are shitting on your lawn. And let's keep, you can fertilize your lawn however you want, but we're not going to do it with somebody else's trash. Like, no, thank you. Their garbage, their poop. No.
I love it.
No. So I like that. That's a great way to kind of see that in a way that says like, no, this is not okay.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so anything else that you would like to leave the listeners with today? One, I would like you to share maybe a couple of your books and we'll link them, but kind of tell us maybe the first book to start with or even with the coloring book. That is actually, I started designing a coloring book a couple of weeks ago and I want my daughter to help me, but kind of maybe where they should start. And then also just if there's anything where it's like, I want to make sure I leave you with this information.
Yeah, so I would say be prepared is going to be like my parting invitation. These things happen. They're going to keep happening. Boundary violations, they're going to keep happening. So being prepared for them and knowing how you're going to respond, it's really like a gift for you. It's getting ahead of the problem. I don't want to call it that, and knowing like, okay, if this happens, like you walk into a big meeting, you go up on stage, you go to sing, you're an actor. All of those people practice. They practice a lot and it builds confidence and it helps you come across more clearly and more succinctly and more intelligent. I don't know that that's the word I'm looking for, but I'll go for it. So be prepared. Know that these situations are going to happen. And I actually have a free download on my website. It's SherylGreenSpeaks.com. It's with an S. And you can grab my how to say no cheat sheet. Okay. And it's got all the different like prompts of like, they're sentence starters. Like, hey, I have to go have this conversation and I have to say no. Here's how I can do it. Okay. And yes, no is one of them. But so I would say, be prepared and that confidence will come. And the other thing is just know that you're allowed to say no. It's okay. Even if you've never been allowed to before, you didn't grow up in a home where it was acceptable, you get to say no now. So yeah, and connect with me. I would love that. My website has all of my links. I'm on Instagram. When I remember, I'm on LinkedIn. My books, including the coloring book, Color Your Way to Healthy Boundaries.
Ooh, okay.
They are both on Amazon. There's links on my website. And, the book, obviously start with the book, but the coloring book it's just like having a motivational quote in front of you for, 45 minutes or however long it takes you to color. So it's kind of hitting your head constantly. And there's one spicy word in the coloring book. So do not automatically give it to children.
Unless they can't read. That has happened in my house before.
I am not a mother, so you do you. That I will not give advice on.
I didn't do it on purpose. I come down, it was in COVID, and I would like print them out because I'm like, I got to get through this. And I love coloring.
Yeah.
I love coloring. And my daughter it's on my Instagram someplace, but she's sitting down coloring. Thankfully, you can't read yet.
Learn sometime. I mean,
yes.
It's not the worst, but I don't want to be the reason.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So which book would you recommend starting with?
Yeah. So look, I would say start with You Had Me at No. It's my latest book. My first one I don't have behind me, but it's called Surviving to Thriving: How to Overcome Setbacks and Rock Your Life. And it's motivational personal development, like what I did to get out of a depression in my late 20s. It's still good, but the other ones are kind of business books. So if you want to check that out, totally welcome to. They're all on my website. But You Had Me at No. It's my masterpiece at this point. So, and it's just, the problem that most people I encounter are facing. You're just like, I don't know how to say no. I'm overwhelmed and resentful, and it's starting to impact my life and my relationships.
Mm-hmm. And get a free download. That sounds like a great, what was that called again?
So it's the How to Say No cheat sheet. And it's at SherylGreenSpeaks.com, and you'll see it as soon as you go on there. And it literally, I have clients that print it out and laminate it and stick it to their wall at work so that when someone walks in, they're like, and they consult it and they're like, all right, I got my answer now.
Yes. Or put it put it up next to your computer when you're on the Zoom meetings. I think this is a fantastic tool. So please, if you struggle with, I'm assuming if you're listening still, this is an issue for you. So go print that off and keep it everywhere. Screensaver. There you go.
Yes.
There you go. Awesome. Sheryl, well, it was great talking with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your information. And I just know that this is going to be a huge asset to everyone who listened.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Spirit of a Badass is a Lit Path Studios podcast and is produced by Jamie Gale and Alecia Jacobson. Music by Shane Ivers. We'll be back with another inspiring interview. Until then, keep your spirits high and your energy badass.